Ooctane Underground, you already know who it is, as always, Corey J.
Chase Dizzy.
For those who may or may not know, the month of May has been designated as MMIW Awareness Month. The EBCI are hosting a they're hosting their 5th annual MMIW walk to honor those individuals that have gone missing or have been murdered within our indigenous communities. This is an issue that affects all tribes across the globe, all indigenous peoples across the globe very heavily. We have the opportunity to speak to two of the more prominent activists within our community and get their insights about this movement and what it means to them.
Dizzy, we have two special guests. If you want to introduce yourself.
My name is Missy Crow. I'm live in the Yali Hill community, and yeah, glad to be here.
Lou Montalongo. I'm from the Yellow Hill community as well.
We just had a few questions we want to ask you guys as far as the movement that is going on, and a lot of people are. I wouldn't say a lot of people are aware. We're trying to bring more awareness to it, but it is the month of May, and May is awareness for missing, murdered Indigenous women slash people, if that's the correct term as well, because we do have men as well,
Right.
And it's becoming a huge issue, and it has always really been an issue, but we're now having a voice behind it, and we're bringing a lot more awareness to that. So with that, if you want to go ahead and ask her the first one.
If you guys just want to give a general overview of what event took place today in Cherokee and your contributions to that event and any thoughts or concerns regarding it.
Yeah, today we had the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's memorial event. It is a national event. May 5th is known as the National Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women's Day. Over the last couple of years, though, we have changed the MMIW to include our two-spirit relatives as well as our men. So you'll see a lot of MMIW two-spirit relatives added on to that title, because we do recognize that it's not just our women, but it is our men as well as our two-spirit relatives. So we wanted to acknowledge that. So today we held our 5th walk here in Cherokee, and yeah, we was just really pleased to see the turnout that we had.
All right, so I guess along with that, how has this movement affected you personally, first and foremost? Like a direct, effect from that, as far as like relatives or anybody, we can get as personal as or vague as you would like. I want to definitely respect your guys' view on that as well.
Well, last year, our relative Ruby Sky Montalongo, our cousin, she was murdered in Covelo, California. Her murder is still has not been prosecuted. There are a number of underage teens who had involvement in Ruby's death that have yet to serve any jail time for the crime that they committed. It's been really hard because that is our little cousin, and she never got the opportunity to grow up on the Kuala boundary. And so we went out to California for her funeral last year. And a week after that was the MMIW March for 2023. And so this work is very personal to us, and it's work that we don't do just for ourselves, but we understand that the pain that comes from having a relative murdered or go missing is a pain that we don't want no one else to go through. So we're going to try our best to do the work that we can to ensure that nobody else has to see what we saw or go through the things that we went through. Ruby was unable to live the life that she deserved because of violence, and it's just been very hard. But also, we understand that we have to continue speaking about her case as well as continue to push for justice. But again, it goes back to as communities, we have to create safe environments for each other. We have to ensure that we're protecting each other because cops aren't going to protect us. We have to be there to protect us.
Mhm. And on the Crow family, right now we're looking for our relative Gabe Crow. Gabe is the grandson of my uncle Albert Crow up on the Big Y community, and he went missing the 27th of January, and so with the request of the family, and that's one thing that we won't do anything unless the family asks us to. um, Lou and I headed up the physical search to go look for him. We did that for a month to no avail, mind you. No help from the police. But we also had another relative by the name of Jason Crow. Then everyone knew him as Crowbar. Um, he was murdered, and they found his body down in Ela Dam. And while there's rumor, that the drug cartel got him, we don't know because there's never been anyone charged or anyone even a suspect in his death. And so when we have these cases that affect us personally, like Ruby, like Gabe, like Jason, as well as all the names that you heard today, Jackie Davis was the first that I can remember as a little girl that went missing. And my father was working for the fire department, police department, and I remember them looking for her. And she was right by the entrance of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. She was only 13. And so whenever we look at that history of our women that are disappearing and the women that have been murdered, a lot of it has been because of domestic violence, but we're seeing now, a lot of people are worried. And if in our community, we've been talking about human trafficking. And so these are some of the things that we see that affect our relatives. And so working uh, through the state 5 years ago with the North Carolina MMIW, Lou worked with Sovereign Bodies Institute when she was at UC Berkeley. Looking at the data, we now have 7 states that now have laws that recognize indigenous women when they go missing or and murdered. Mostly your northern tier states where this movement started, and this movement started because of the man camps that were being built from the pipelines. And so ours comes down to tourism and domestic violence and the casino, all these things that are going on. How do we protect ourselves? And so one thing that we're really trying to push through the state of North Carolina, which the governor now has recognized in the state of North Carolina May 5th as MMIW, but we need more legislation because still statistically, we still have a lot of women that aren't categorized as anything but other, whenever that happens in law enforcement.
Right. Um, that's actually the next question that we were going to ask is what suggestions do you have that may help improve
And
the outcome to
just to butt in, to tag alongside that question, how do you think the legislation alongside jurisdiction come into play given this specific problem that we have? How do you think that impacts the missing murdered indigenous women and people? How do you think jurisdiction impacts the whole situation with the lack of police response?
Since the since the murder of George Floyd, a lot of law enforcement personnel resigned. And while we see that, in Gabe's case, Asheville City Police, has lost a lot of law enforcement officers as well as Buncombe County. Asheville City just got a new police chief, and that's how we were able to get him as soon as he became the new police chief to revisit, Gabe's disappearance. And that's what we seen 2 weeks ago of them going and searching Spivey Mountain. Mind you, we tried to search that mountain too, but we didn't have the personnel to do that or the capabilities to do that. Not everybody can walk through these woods. Not everybody knows these woods, but we know that Gabe did because he gathered and stuff for the baskets. And so when we see jurisdiction And a lot of people ask, how come Cherokee Police don't do anything? And they are helping, but there's jurisdiction. His disappearance didn't happen on federal lands. And if anything happens on federal lands, yeah, we have the Cherokee Police Department, but to have more investigations, our chief has to call in the federal investigators, the BIA federal investigators, right? That can come on federal lands, the FBI, only the federal, but that has to be called by the chief to come in. So then, like I said, then we want to try to show our people the examples of why we truly do need a constitution, that gives us that sovereign jurisdictional right to say anybody that comes on to the koala boundary, are under our jurisdiction and our laws, and they will be held accountable. You can come and visit all you want, right? We can have all the tourism here as you want, but don't violate our women. And if we remember, the koala is Cherokee for Polly. So she is our mother, right? So Polly is our mother, and so we have to protect her too. And so that's what we say when we hurt Mother Earth and our mother, we hurt all of our women, all of our people. So we have to start recognize that as Cherokee people, Yuya, Ani, Yuya, right? That we have to understand, what does that mean? And we say principled people. It doesn't mean that we're better than anybody. It means that we strive to uphold the principles, the basic principles of life. That's who we are as a people. So how do we get back to that, to understand that? And then how do we create fair and equal rights and protection for everyone?
Yeah, and to add to that too, I feel like with with us stepping into that, we have to also acknowledge the fact that the forms of criminalization that we've accepted are from colonization itself. We didn't have prisons where we would throw people who messed up in and lock them up forever. We didn't institutionalize them into that system. And so we have to understand that if we want to see change, we have to see a difference of the way that we hold people accountable. And for me, I think that's through restorative justice. And as Aniawea, we've always had forms of restorative justice where if somebody messed up, they always had the opportunity to make it right. And it was up to every single member of our community to say if that person has changed or if they've seen the life they could do right, then we would allow them to be reintroduced back into our community. But we would never ever throw somebody in a jail. And so when I think about like what's going on now, it's also about a conversation about how we could start reframing the way that we view violence against us and how we choose to have some sort of restorative justice for that. And for me, at least, it's getting together and having these hard conversations about where we might have been the oppressor in somebody else's story, how colonialism may have affected us to play a role in the oppression of somebody else. And so moving forward, we have to consciously be aware of how we may affect other people within our own communities, but that's broader as well, and show up for one another, because again, like mom said, like a lot of our understanding of who we are as Cherokee people, we have to understand it from a Cherokee way of thinking and not a white person way of thinking.
So, given that you specifically address like Cherokee people, how do you think our relations with other tribes could be improved given the movement?
And it has been improved, honestly, like throughout the past, since this movement has gained mainstream attention, there has been a lot of across territories organizing for MMIW. So with the organization that I work with at Berkeley, Sovereign Bodies Institute, we collected data to create the first ever missing and murdered indigenous people database in America. Prior to that, didn't exist. So we created a database of every name, the ages of the people that have been murdered or missing, the details of their case, whether it's been solved or unsolved, and where the case stands today. And you can go onto the database and access all of this information from anywhere. And so that cross collaboration has been happening, but it also crosses borders too, because we understand as Native people that the border wall crossed us and that we don't cross that the border wall came against our territory. So we've been trying to organize within Mexico, Central America.
And just for the viewers, could you explain the border wall as in what it means?
Yeah. So, like, the United States government, when they created their bounds of the United States, they crossed our territory in order to create those bounds, which has always been our territories. So there are certain tribes that extend beyond the borders. So, like the Tohono O'odham tribe, they are half in Arizona and half in Mexico. And that border wall, they didn't choose to have that border wall separate them, but America did that, and now you see that separation. And so you have one side of the tribe living in Arizona having to deal with the United States' atrocities against us. And then you have another side living against Mexico, which still has the United States atrocities on their hands on the other side. And so what I'm saying is that we've been trying to organize across that border because we understand that that wasn't us who put that border there.
Right, and the same goes for our relatives up north. You have
Yeah.
the Mohawk tribe,
Mohawks, yeah, Canada.
you know, up into Canada, right? And then you have the Blackfeet, you know, from Montana up in there. So we have to understand when we say that they're the medicine line, because that's something that when we looked at who we were and looking at our traditional trade routes, and I come to learn that we were relatives from the tip of the Arctic all the way to the Antarctic. On the Western Hemisphere, we migrated. And so we even know that our corn chelu comes from the seed of Central America. You know, to be able to see that when you look at our relatives in Canada who are under the colonial government up there in Canada, right? And that comes from Great Britain, right? And so in England and the Queen and all them guys, but look what they did to our native people in Canada.
That showing to that Hawaii,
right,
Puerto Rico, Guam,
right,
all of these places that the United States government invaded and left to ruins.
And so then we look at Mexico, right? And Spanish is like English in Mexico. Most everybody in Mexico speaks Spanish, but you have indigenous communities in Mexico that goes all the way down to Guatemala, goes all the way down to Belize, all the way down to the Amazon, right? And we even have our relatives in the Amazon that are having to deal with what you're seeing happen to us, what you're seeing happening in Palestine, all these things that are happening to indigenous peoples.
And what's at the root of it? Colonialism. Colonialism is at the root of all of this. So people tend to think that colonialism is done and over with because the United States of America is established here, whatever. Colonialism never ends. It's a mindset. It's systematically engraved in everything. And so if we really want to start making a change, we have to start seeing where colonialism has warped our perception.
Right.
Because that's really what it is.
And we can't change that system. So now we have to create
our
a new
own
system.
Yeah, we have to.
And we have to create our Cherokee system back.
Just to kind of wrap up the interview and whatnot, any comments, questions, concerns regarding today's march and the event that took place today?
Well, I during my speech today, I wanted to make sure that I use that time to have everyone who was present there understand that our intentions doesn't always equate to our impact. So we could have good intentions while we do this work and think that we're helping by showing up and being here for the march. But if our impact is that we're adding more names to the Cherokee MMIW list next year, then we need to start reevaluating how we could better make our impact. Because we could have good intentions all we want with this work, but it has to be about our impact, and our impact needs to be creating a safer environment, having legislation in place to keep us safe, and also treating each other better. Like, that's the main thing, is we have to start treating each other better, and start to see the significance in people before they're gone. Because Gabe was significant before he went missing. Gabe was significant because Gabe was Gabe. Gabe wasn't significant because he made baskets. Well, that added to it. Gabe should just be significant because he's Gabe. Same with all of us. We all are significant in our own ways. We all matter, and we are needed in order for our society to run effectively. Traditionally, when we would hold our council sessions, it would be every child, woman, man, two-spirit person in our community, and everyone would have a chance. Even the little babies would have a chance to speak. And if we allowed the babies to speak back then again, we should allow the babies to speak now. It's about seeing that significance in each other and going back into just transitioning to our traditional understanding of life, really.
So just to recap, your name again, community you're from, and any last words.
Missy Crow, and thank you guys for giving this time and the platform to get this message out and encourage our community to let's get to work and follow us on the gram.
Cut that out. I'm Lou Montalongo. I'm from the Yellow Hill community. This work means a lot to me, and I understand and recognize that it's more than just me. I'm just Lou. At the end of the day, I can only do so much. This work has to take all of us in order to see a change. It can't just be a handful of us. It's literally got to be all of us. At the core, the work that we're doing with MMIW is communal.